How do we feel about the future? About knowing what's going to be at the end? I'm not talking the Lord coming back, Revelation style. Just, what's next Thursday look like? What am I going to do when I'm done with seminary? Do I want kids? These sorts of future-ridden questions. If you are like me, you have to remind yourself to take those to the Lord. It's not something I'm proud of. It's a major character flaw in me. I will trust God with everybody else. But my plan, I've got. I've had one since I was 12. It's my 5-year plan. It's great and it's beautiful. And there's been many iterations of it because I do change my mind with relative frequency. But ultimately, what I've always had is an idea, a skeleton of what the next 5 years are going to look like. And what I have to remind myself of constantly is that my plan doesn't matter. The end doesn't matter. The journey to get there is what does. Worshiping God along every step of that journey is what does. My call is not to accomplish this 5-year plan. It is not to check the boxes of what I think a preacher or a pastor or a wife should look like. My call is to worship God in everything that I'm doing. In every step, not knowing the end, because God's timing is unknown, but we still worship him. In Exodus chapter 15, verses 19 through 21, it says, "When the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and chariot drivers went into the sea, the Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them, 'Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea.'" Bow with me. Lord, these are your words, not mine. Your thoughts, not mine. And your perfection, not my idea of it. May you be glorified. Amen. If you're like me, this is a terrifying passage, because what are we supposed to do with this? Sure, Miriam worships, but it's about God ending the lives of some people. How do we wrestle with that? Well, in the words of my favorite Hebrew professor, my only Hebrew professor, it's all about context. So if we contextualize this, we know that this is happening as the Israelites are leaving Egypt. This story spans so many chapters and so many children's ministries, and usually doesn't go much further past that. But you pull a 9-year-old over and they can probably tell you everything you need to know about the story of Moses. The 10 Commandments, the Exodus, the plagues, all of it. I can tell you right now, none of my students are going to know about this passage, because then I have to answer those hard questions that we as adults are able to wrestle with. What do we do with this? Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Pack up your bags and go home. God took care of it, even if it meant the destruction of other people. So the Israelites are here. They have crossed the Red Sea. It's been parted. They've walked through dry ground, whole 9 yards. And Miriam responds in worship. Now, from this perspective, that probably seems like a simple task. God did something, so there was worship. But I'm here to tell you that if the Lord struck my enemies down with a lot of water, I'd have to pick my jaw up off the ground before I could worship. Not necessarily because of the great and mighty act, but because of the destruction. because of the timing. For hundreds of years, the Israelites were in captivity. They sat there and they concocted plans, had thoughts, sent prayers up to the sky, begging for deliverance. And God didn't do it until here. And when he did it pretty hard. The Israelites find themselves having crossed over on completely dry ground, not mud, but sand. If you are like me, you've seen The Prince of Egypt. And if you are also like me, it took a grown-up watching of The Prince of Egypt to really grasp hold of the beauty that is this. In the movie, the sea parts. And if I'm terrified of the ocean, I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I can't watch this before bed, even in my age. But the sea parts, we get flashes of lightning that sort of backlight these sea creatures living their life, going about undisturbed, as though God did not just literally move water to make room for his people as he delivered his people. And so we see the waters move, we see the Israelites on dry ground, and typically that's where the children's ministry sermon ends till the next week. But Miriam's song, a direct response to Moses's from earlier, Miriam's song takes it a step further and showcases the terrifying glory and power of God. He did not only deliver his people, he showed his people that he would vanquish their enemies. He showed his people that he would put to death what got in the way. And so as terrifying as it is to wrestle with the idea of a God that would do that, the focus is that they never knew God's timing. They never knew God's way. They still worshiped him because he was worthy of it. His glory and his majesty shone through even in this destruction. Now, I don't know if y'all have ever heard the phrase, a watched pot never boils. I spent an embarrassing amount of my life thinking that that was scientific. Surely there's some science there about how if my face is staring into the pot of boiling water, something gets in the way, right? I don't know about all that. Turns out it's not. It's not rooted in science. My mom just didn't like when I lingered while she was trying to make me Kraft mac and cheese. But ultimately, I knew what the end was, and so I wanted to play a role in all of the in-between. I knew what was coming, cheesy, delicious goodness. So I wanted to play a role from the beginning. I wanted an active participation in that. Knowing the timing, 9 to 11 minutes, knowing what it was going to take. Milk, the cheese packet, butter, patience. And so because I had it all laid out in front of me, I was willing to do it, I wanted to do it, and I would, some might say in an act of worship, eat the macaroni when it was all said and done. Usually a little too soon. The Israelites didn't know. They were staring at this pot of boiling water of their captivity, waiting and waiting and waiting. They didn't know what would come, but they stuck with God through it. Through plagues, they worshiped. Through trials, they worshiped. Through captivity, they worshiped. And then, when released, they worshiped. I think it's important to look at what happens directly after this passage, and that is that they stopped worshiping and started complaining. And if that doesn't hit home, let's get coffee because you're better than I am. Sometimes we get so caught up in the great, wonderful thing that God has just shown us he could do. We forget to sit in that worship for a while. We immediately start asking for more. For our water to be made sweet, for bread to fall from heaven. We know he's capable, so we push it. We might be able to settle into not knowing his timing, but we still want him to prove something. And friends, that is not what we're called to do. We are called to follow, to obey, to worship God, no matter his timing, no matter the path, no matter the steps or the people that are with us. Because God's timing is unknown, and we respond in worship.